of three paired cartilages and three unpaired cartilages. Unpaired cartilages are thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, and epiglottis, and paired cartilage are arytenoid and cuneiform and corniculate. And so it is laryngeal apparatus is further divided in three compartments. One is supraglottis, glottis, and subglottis. Supraglottis extends from the undersurface of the epiglottis till the vestibular folds, and subglottis from the true ocal folds to the inferior border of the cricoid cartilage, and in between the two ocal folds there is a glottis area. Here, stridor is nothing but abnormal noisy breathing that occurs due to the turbulent airflow passing through the narrow lumen of partially obstructed airway. It can be inspiratory, expiratory, or biphasic. Inspiratory stridor is usually because of supraglottic obstruction. The lesions here will be usually dynamic, and expiratory will be if the lesions are in the trachea or bronchi, and biphasic in stridor will be in case if the lesions are in the within the glottis or subglottic region, where the lesions will be usually dynamic. Again, the classification by location of the obstruction, it is same like supraglottic, glottic, subglottic, or tracheal. The various causes for a stridor in neonate are either congenital infectious, or some neoplasm, or other acquired causes. Congenital like laryngomalacia, subglottic stenosis, laryngeal cyst, web, or ocal fold immobility. Infections like epiglottitis, laryngotracheobronchitis, bacterial tracheitis, etc. Neoplasm like vascular tumors and papillomas. Other acquired causes like ocal fold immobility or post-intubation trauma are the causes for stridor. I'll be discussing brief about a few of the important causes of stridor in neonate. First is the laryngomalacia, which is the most common cause of stridor in neonate. It is caused by immature neuromuscular tone or immature laryngeal cartilage. It is asymptomatic until 6 to 8 weeks after the birth of the baby. This is because the inspiratory pressure will not be sufficient to collapse the immature cartilage till the 6 to 8 weeks. As the child grows, the pressure in the lung will increase, and because of this pressure, the laryngeal cartilage may get collapsed and may produce a stridor. The anatomical features of laryngomalacia are a collapse of cuneiform and cornicate cartilage, posterior inspiratory displacement of epiglottitis, short aryepiglottic folds, long tubular epiglottis, which appears omega shape in laryngoscopic examination. This laryngomalacia is graded based on the severity. It is not based on the noise of the stridor. It is based on the associated feeding or obstructive symptoms. It is mild if it is inconsequential stridor. It is moderate if the stridor is with the feeding related symptoms and which improves on acid suppression treatment. It is considered severe if it is associated with feeding and obstructive symptoms and which require surgical intervention. Children neonate with stridor who needs immediate intervention, if they have red flag signs like apnea, tachypnea, cyanosis, feeding difficulties, failure to thrive, weight loss, and evidence of aspiration or pneumonia, these are the red flag signs which are considered to be severe and need immediate intervention. The diagnosis is with the flexible laryngoscope on an awake child, which allows the examination of larynx in awake child, so that the inspiratory air will collapse the larynx, So we can observe during the laryngeal examination. And sometimes this laryngomalacia can be diagnosed with the endoscopy endoscopy while evaluating for the feeding issues. This laryngomalacia, most of the time, it resolves spontaneously by the age of 12 to 18 months. In mild to moderate cases, like I mentioned earlier, anti-GRD measures controls the symptoms. Whereas in severe laryngomalacia, like in case of what I mentioned in red flag signs, yeah, like failure to thrive, apnea, tachypnea, cyanotic spells, in such conditions, surgical treatment may be required. The surgical procedures which are carried for laryngomalacia are supraglottoplasty, release of epiglottic fold, and in some cases epiglottopexy, where the epiglottis is lifted up and fixed to the either base of the tongue or to the hyoid bone. And in very rarely, tracheostomy may be required in case of laryngomalacia. The other conditions like congenital laryngeal cyst, which are usually rare, these cysts may present with upper airway obstructive symptoms. They are divided either extralaryngeal or endolaryngeal. Extralaryngeal cysts are uh, they arise from the lingual surface of epiglottis. The cause for this is either due to obstruction of the mucous gland or because of some developmental abnormality. These are usually unilocular, present with symptoms of supraglottic airway obstruction. The diagnosis is with again flexible laryngoscopy. Treatment includes endoscopically excision of the cyst. If it is not possible with the excision, marsupialization can be considered. Endolaryngeal cysts are saccular cysts. These cysts are they present as a muffled cry or dysphagia. This is due to failure of maintaining a saccular orifice. They develop into an abnormal herniation of saccule. Lateral extension through the thyroid membrane of these saccular cysts may present as a mass in the neck. Focal fold immobility is another important cause of stridor in neonate. This may be most of the time it is because of traumatic causes such as injury during thoracic and cardiac surgeries, trauma during delivery that results in nerve stretch injury, or trauma from endotracheal intubation. Other causes may be hydrocephalus or Arnold malformation, which causes vocal fold immobility. These are two types, unilateral and bilateral. Unilateral vocal fold immobility presents with episodes of choking with feet, aspiration, and weak voice and cry. They usually doesn't present with stridor. If there is unilateral vocal fold immobility and stridor, then other associated causes to be searched upon, like for example, laryngomalacia. Bilateral local fold immobility presents with stridor only. That could be either uniphasic or biphasic. Awake flexible laryngoscopy is again the gold standard of diagnostic quality. Cross-sectional imaging after once the diagnosis of vocal fold immobility is done with the CT scan or MRI to look for the course of recurrent laryngeal nerve from neck to the thorax. Idiopathic cases of vocal fold immobility are usually observed for at least 2 to 3 years of life, which will usually recover. If the patient is unable to ventilate appropriately, a tracheostomy is usually necessary in case of immobility. A use of botulinum toxin injection in vocal folds is again having promising results in case of vocal fold. Yes, sir.
Shoaib, if I interrupt you, I think Dr. Rajan has also this message saying that he is not able to join the meeting. Just talk to him and sort it out. One. Number two, make
Yes,
it a little more interactive. Okay. I mean, you're presenting my stuff is good, but it'll be good
yes, sir.
if you can put some examples. But anyway, if we just get sorted, the moderator is not able to join. Just make sure that
Yes,
he
sir.
joins.
Sure.
Just. Prem, in the meantime, you're free to give comments because your experience of what was Strider and other things in our hospital about the upper airway work is phenomenal. We'll be happy to have your input. Prem? As Shoaib is getting things sorted out with Rajendra Sauji, it'll be good to have input from Prem. Prem, would you like to say anything about what has been discussed so far? ಬಾರೆ ಪ್ರೇಮದಿಂದ ಕರೀತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಅವ್ರು ಯಾಕೋ ರೆಸ್ಪಾಂಡೇ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ.
Hello.
Yes, Prem, come, please. Waiting for you to start. Yeah, Sauji is joined.
Yes, sir.
Anything so far that you would like to add, Dr. Prem?
Yes, sir. Regarding the vocal fold immobility. Hello.
Yeah. You're audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Regarding vocal fold immobility, as you rightly said, most of the time, if it is unilateral, there won't be much of any symptoms as such because the other vocal cord which is functioning will take over and will have a compensatory result. So usually the bilateral vocal fold immobility is what require intervention. And some of the interventions, what is done is, most of the time we do this posterior chordotomy and retinoidectomy. And nowadays, what we do is the posterior cricoid grafting, that is posterior expansion of the cricoid. So this improves or this widens the airway. That is one thing which is done recently. Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay, I think Rajendra joined back. You can continue, Shoaib, please. Shoaib?
My God, it's not funny. Speak to me.
Shoaib?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. Coming to next is glottic stenosis. It is the narrowing of the lumen at the level of vocal folds. The narrowing can be either due to fibrosis, scarring, or webbing. The cause of stenosis is either congenital or acquired. Congenital causes congenital web. Posterior glottis stenosis is about 15% in patients who have been intubated for more than 10 days. Traumatic intubation, multiple extubation, and reintubation, oversized endotracheal tube are the causes for glottic stenosis. As I mentioned, congenital laryngeal web is an important cause for glottic stenosis. It is due to the failure of complete recanalization of larynx during embryogenesis. 75% of the webs occurs at the level of vocal folds. They present with airway obstructive symptoms. Most of the time, it is biphasic stridor in case of glottic stenosis and congenital laryngeal web, and also weak voice. Flexible laryngoscopy is the diagnostic modality.